say thank you very much for inviting me to come and talk to your group of people this evening. It is really my pleasure to be able to come and share with me the experience that I had in going to a country such as Russia. Moscow, which is a very fascinating city and which is also the capital of the Russian Republic, was founded in 1147. The unique appearance of Moscow has taken shape over 8 centuries. It's a metropolis of 8 million people. Moscow is the world's 5th most populous city and the administrative, legislative, economic, educational, and cultural capital of Russia. It is a magnetic city. This particular picture here shows the hotel that we stayed in Moscow. Now, the pictures are a little bit deceiving because when you look at this hotel, you think, wow, that was a pretty nice place they stayed. But if I can paint a little bit of a picture to put you in the frame of mind of arriving in Russia, the first thing is you get off the plane in the airport and everything is very dark. It's not quite as dark as what you're sitting in right now in this room, but it is very dingy because and very little light is left in other than natural light because the hydro is so expensive, so they don't turn the electricity on. So whatever light comes in through the window is basically what you get. Things are not well kept up, so they have a lot of dust and cobwebs and those kinds of things. And in the airport, every time you turned around, there was somebody in an army uniform looking at you. So this is an example of the Kremlin wall, and the wall itself has 20 towers. So again, you think of pictures of days gone by and when there's would be the commissionaires there with their fur hats there, or again army personnel. Now the Kremlin wall is no longer guarded to that extent, but believe me, if you walk along closely and you look up into those little spikes there, what there are all along there are video cameras. So there's still a fair amount of security that goes on. Highest paid. The other people, and again, like when we talk in the healthcare profession, because that's what we were there to see, doctors receive a maximum of $40 a month. Nurses get $12, maybe $15 a month. So there's quite a comparison, where a linguist would be up to the $100 a month. So that's why everybody wants to be one. So they have a very high enrollment at the university. This is an ambulance, and I'm going to bore you with some healthcare pictures here because of course, that's what we were there for. And I was quite amazed. I mean, we sometimes think we have poor service in Canada, but believe me, it's nothing compared to what they have there. 9% of the federal budget is spent on health care in Canada. 4% of the national budget in Russia is spent on health care there. And it shows. They don't have to pay for in-hospital medications, and they don't have to pay for use of an ambulance service. But the interesting things that happen there is that the ambulance is taken and work is done in the field, so they will do everything to keep the person at home versus taking them to hospital. And the reason being for that is the high cost of the hospital stay, but also the minimum hospital stay is usually a month. Compared to here, it can be as low as 4 days. We say our minimum stay is 4 to 7 days in hospital. Their minimum stay is a month, and that's because of the infection problems. They have a high rate of infection. They have a high rate of death from infection. This is the ambulance garage. I didn't dare tell the fellows about what a nice ambulance garage I had in Gladstone after I saw what they have. This is the main ambulance garage for Moscow, and they do approximately, anywhere from 300 to 325, 350 calls a day. Like there's a pile of ambulances going in and out of this building, and this is exactly what it looked like. These are the ambulances that are transporting the people in and out. And it was very interesting when we walked in here, what they had done is they have taken one of their resuscitative units, ambulances, and they've put it in the garage, and that was the only ambulance that we were allowed to look in. We were not allowed to go and look into any of these other ambulances. We weren't allowed to peer through the windows. We were very quickly, shuffled this way, please. We will go over here, please. Come with me now, that type of thing. And of course, what we got to see was their most impressive unit. Now this is the unit that we saw, and this is where we went through these little doors here into this building, and it was pretty dark and dingy, and it was raining that day, so it was even dark and dingy outside. And you can see the paint on the building and the condition of it certainly needs some repair. Again, this is just a picture of the ambulance. This is a pretty nice ambulance, this one. And this shows you some of the equipment. Now, you wouldn't find an ambulance here in Canada that has this much equipment in the back. And this was very interesting to us But this comes back to this concept about how they take health care to the people versus the people coming to it. Now they would take this particular unit out. They might resuscitate a person in the field. If they had something like a motor vehicle accident, if the person needed stitches, they'd stitch them up right out there and send them home. You know, anything that they could do and send them home, that's exactly what they do. They put them in the back of the unit. You know, they even perform, you know, some bits of minor surgery in the back if you're, they even have anesthetic in there to do that. They send a physician out in the ambulance, so the physician goes right to the patient as well. So it's a little bit different system than what we're used to. Can you see in this picture what is the most common thing that we all know? Does anybody see it? In the background here are the golden arches. This is the famous McDonald's. It used to be the largest McDonald's in the world until McDonald's opened up a branch in Beijing, I believe is now the largest. This particular McDonald's will seat 700 people, and you can buy a Big Mac there for $1.14. Now for us, that was a bargain. That was a real steal. We thought that was really good. But the only problem with that is, again, going back to what they're making, if you're only making $7 to $10 a month, $1.14 for a hamburger is pretty pricey. They do have fairly long lineups in good weather, you know, for people waiting to go in, and they do have Russian people serving, and apparently one of the biggest things that they've had to overcome is, you know how McDonald's is based on service of the people, friendliness, speedy and whatnot, and they've had a little bit of trouble sort of changing the mode of thinking of the Muscovites, because of course working under the communist rule, it didn't matter whether you worked or you didn't work, you got paid the same. Sort of thing. It didn't matter whether you showed up for work drunk or you showed up sober, you still got paid the same. So it's sort of like the work ethic has to change a little bit. The other thing, again, just noticing, you'll see there are again some more signs on the building. Again, they're all American signs. They're American companies that have moved in, you know, and they've put the signage up, which did not exist before. This is a gas station. The natural resources that are in Russia, of course, they have piles and piles of natural resources. They have oil, gas, coal, they have nuclear fuels, they have hydroelectric resources. They have every kind of mineral deposit, and of course they're famous for the diamond deposits that are in Russia. They're a wealthy country as far as national resources are concerned. They have a lot of fertile land. They have a lot of forest land that is very known for the wild boar hunting. So it sort of leaves us, and we wonder why the fact that the Soviet Union was ultimately unable to feed itself without large imports of grain from the US and Canada, like why? You know, why is this when they have so many natural resources that they relied at one period in time so heavily on those grain imports from the States and Canada? Well, it shows us that it is perhaps the most damning indictment of the Soviet economic regime. The collective farm system and the poor and inadequate infrastructure all basically led to the downfall of them not being able to feed their people with the resources that they had available. And the other thing is that it's very obvious that that money was going into the army and the space program. This is the Novodishi Monastery, or the new Maiden Convent. And this is a very interesting place because this is something that I'm sure that there's some Canadian men would like to have in Canada. This is where you put your wives if you don't want them anymore. If you're tired of them, or if you have unmarried daughters and you think they should be married, or they're widowed or whatever, you send them here for the rest of your time. Peter the Great, his first wife, when he got tired of her, this is where he shipped her, was to the Novodishi Monastery. Of course, that's not what's practiced nowadays, but in days gone by, that was a common thing. It's a beautiful place. They managed to keep it alive. And one of the translators that was with our particular group, her father had been a priest, and he had actually been exiled to Siberia. So she was very interested in knowing what kind of religion we had in Canada, and she was quite amazed that we were able to choose our faith, and that they had never been able to, because and having had the first-hand experience of her father, you know, being exiled because of being a priest was fairly traumatic to her. So achieving religious harmony. This is a picture here on your left is the KGB headquarters. And as I said before, the KGB basically are no longer, or supposedly they're no longer, so this is an empty building. One of the neat little things that we thought, they had these little KGB passports or pass cards that you could buy, and the front of it, what's written on the front means KGB, and you open it up and it's got a place for your name and a picture and whatnot. And again, I'll send it around, but we thought this is pretty good to bring home and flash and say, you know, I belong to the KGB. So they were a big tourist item, believe me. Again, this is an examining room. You can see that some of the equipment is fairly antiquated. What I liked about this picture is check out where the baby is. Now, did you ever think of using a shopping cart to put the baby in? Like, these people are much smarter than us. We probably pay $500 for a bassinet. You can just go to Safeway and take that out of the lot. The only problem where I wondered where it came from is because there is no grocery stores, like there's no big supermarkets or whatever. So I'm not sure where that shopping cart came from, but I thought that was really good. This picture I wanted to show you because this is this is the operating room, the operating theater. And this actually isn't in Russia, this is in Hungary. And why I wanted to show it to you because the doctor that showed us there, I really appreciated what he had to say. He says, you know, you talk about your low infection rate, you talk about your healthcare system being so great, but this is what we have to work with. And if you compared, you know, statistics, you would find we're not that far out when you consider our equipment versus your equipment. He says you have your air filtered operating rooms where everything is you know, electronically controlled so that the air is purified in a certain temperature. He said when it gets hot we open the window, you know. When it gets cold you put another portable heater in or you stand there and put another pair of mitts on, you know. We don't have gloves when we do surgery, you know, we can't afford the luxury of doing that. And yet what he was saying is basically, yes, we do have people die of infection, but you, for all of your care and precaution, you also have people die from infection. And I thought that was really interesting because he was right. He was absolutely right. And I have the utmost respect for all of these people for the conditions they work in. And I also have a whole new respect for my profession because I realize how lucky we are to have the system that we have. Okay. The other thing but as the 19th century Russian writer insisted, there is always laughter through tears, and along with political chaos, Russia has also produced some of the greatest architecture, art, music, and literature in history. There is sadness in Russia today as it struggles through an immensely difficult social change, but there is also such overwhelming beauty that few people leave the land unmoved. And I have to say from my experience, believe me, I did not leave the land unmoved. This was really a unique opportunity. And I can say that as a young person, I often said if I ever had the opportunity, I'd like to go to Russia, never ever thinking I'd get there. But I've now had that opportunity. I'm not sure at this point in time I'd like to go back because they have a lot of problems in particular right now. And your safety would be one of the biggest concerns. But maybe in future years to come, if I ever had the opportunity again, I certainly would go. But that gives you an idea of, oh, just as my bulb fades, perfect timing, eh?